Most founders under 2 million in revenue are either tracking everything or they're tracking nothing, and neither of those works very well. Tracking nothing means you're flying blind. You're just making gut level decisions, and they're probably not the right ones because you don't have any data to back it up. And if you're tracking everything, it means you're drowning in spreadsheets and probably no one's looking at them besides you after a week or two. What you actually need is just 3 numbers. There's 3 numbers that every single founder under 2 million in revenue should be tracking. And if you just think about, talk about, and focus on these 3, you're gonna get so much insight from these numbers, you can basically ignore everything else for now. And these aren't the sexiest 3 metrics, but they're the ones that are gonna tell you the truth about your business right away. So here's some quick framing before we look at the 3 metrics. Most founders are looking at their numbers maybe monthly or maybe quarterly when their CPA asks for numbers, but it's really important that you look at these more often. If you're only looking at numbers once per month or once per quarter, it's kind of like looking in the rear view mirror after the accident has already happened. And we want to make sure you're looking through the windshield so you can see what's coming ahead, and you got to be looking at them more often than that. The goal isn't to overreact to every number, it's to see the trends before they happen so you can make good decisions about where you're steering the organization. So metric number 1 is revenue booked. And this is different from actual sales made, right? This is a verbal promise that someone has made to you that they're going to send revenue to your company. And this is important because it's a leading indicator for your organization. Obviously, cash in the bank is king, but it's really important to be looking a little bit further ahead and to know how much money is going to come into the organization over the next week, the next month, and the next quarter. Now, the aperture for how far out you look has everything to do with your business. For my business, I like to look ahead 1 month. In the next month, how much revenue is booked? And obviously I can sort of reverse engineer to figure out how much of my revenue I typically collect. But for you, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's a quarter, but look toward revenue booked for the organization so you know how much money is probably going to be coming in the next short-term period. The reason this is important is because a lot of founders just look at their bank account. So they're literally just logging into the bank account every day and seeing how much money is in there. Now, this works when the money is flowing, but if it's not, you're in trouble, right? Not enough money hit today or this week or this month. And by then it's actually too late. So we need to be looking a little bit ahead toward revenue booked, because if the amount of revenue booked is too small, now you can solve for that problem before it hits your bank account and you realize, now I'm really in trouble. If your bank account is low this week, that's a revenue problem from last month. Remember to track what you book, not what's in your bank. Metric number 2 is pipeline coverage. This one's simple. At any given time during the month, how much potential revenue is in your pipeline? Now, these are not people who verbally committed to you or signed anything. This is all your potential customers. So anyone from a lead to customer who's in your pipeline. Add up the dollar amounts of all those potential deals. Now that's your pipeline coverage. Now here's a great rule of thumb. You need to have 3 times your desired revenue outcome in your pipeline at all times. So if this month you want to do 10,000 in revenue, you need to have 30,000 in your pipeline. If this month you want to do 30,000 in revenue, well, you better have 90,000 or more in your pipeline. Why do you need that much? If I want to do 30,000, couldn't I just have 30,000 in my pipeline? No. In fact, absolutely not. The main reason is that as a simple rule of thumb, you're probably going to close about 30% of the deals in your total pipeline. Remember, these aren't just deals in the final stage of your pipeline. These are deals through the entire pipeline. If you add the dollar amounts of all those up, you'll probably close about a third of those. Now, just a note, if you're closing 80% of the deals in your pipeline consistently, I can almost guarantee your prices are too low. Raise your prices until your close ratio gets closer to 30 to 40%. Now you can track pipeline coverage a little bit better once your close ratio is right. So in order to track this well, you probably need what's called a CRM system. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. It's not that expensive. There's a lot of great ones out there, but this will allow you to track your entire pipeline and very quickly add up the dollar value of the whole pipeline. Now, if you're not there yet, you can also do this on the spreadsheet. Just start to track who you're talking with and the dollar amounts of the potential deals with each of them until you get a CRM, and make sure that's 3 times what your goal is. Now, here's why this is a wonderful leading indicator and why you're going to be looking through the windshield with the pipeline coverage ratio. Anytime your pipeline coverage gets below 3x, let's say it's at 2x or even 1x, now you know, well, I need to fill my pipeline as fast as I can so that in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or a couple of months, I'm going to have enough revenue coming into the organization. Remember, you need 3 times your monthly revenue goal in the pipeline at all times. Not because everything closes, but because not everything closes. The third metric is one that I call tree. That's total revenue per employee. Now, this is one of my absolute favorite metrics, and almost nobody is tracking it. So to calculate tree is super simple, and you could probably do it in your head. First, you take your total annualized revenue for the organization, and then you divide it by your total number of full-time equivalents. So let's say you have 800,000 in total revenue, and you have 4 full-time employees. That's you and 3 others. That's 800,000 divided by 4 gives you your tree, which is 200,000. So your total revenue per employee is 200,000. Now, why is this important? Because this will tell you if your team is generating enough revenue to support itself, and also when you need to hire. So here's the rule that I recommend for how to use tree. If your total revenue per employee is below 250,000 in revenue, you probably shouldn't be hiring anybody else. The reason is because adding new headcount is going to probably suppress your already tight margins, and you're going to be making less money, and the whole organization is going to be constrained. You're just not ready yet to hire someone else. Instead, what you should do is try to get more out of your team. How can we bring in more revenue with the existing amount of team members that we already have? Or how can we make sure our revenue that's already coming in is more profitable by cutting some unnecessary expenses? Now, if your total revenue per employee is over 250,000, it doesn't mean that you have to hire, but it means that you may hire. Now, you'll probably start to notice as your tree grows, maybe it's at 300,000 or 350,000, your team will start to become exhausted. So if your team is really burned out, calculate this ratio, and that will give you the answer. Wow, I'm getting a lot out of my team. They're slammed right now. What do you need to do? Bring in another employee. Your tree is going to go down, but that's going to right size your team and make sure that there's enough people to spread the work among. So here's the simple rule. If your tree is roughly above 250,000, you can hire, and if it's below, you should wait. This is one of the clearest signals that I used for years to tell us when we could hire someone else. Now, just a note, this is going to be different for every single industry. For the nonprofit space, your number might be 200,000. If you're running a software company that has really fat margins, your number might be 300,000. Figure out what number makes the most sense for you and for your organization and stick to it. Most founders hire on gut feel and optimism. Of course, they're excited about the future, and so they want to bring as many people on board as possible. But if you do that, you're going to trim your margins to ribbons, and you're going to be frustrated because you don't have enough money to pay anyone, including yourself. Instead, Tree gives you an actual objective threshold and removes all the emotion from the decision. So before you hire your next person, calculate Tree. If it's over 250,000, green light, and if it's under, red light. So 3 metrics: revenue booked, pipeline coverage, and Tree. Write them down on a piece of paper. Look at them every single week, and be sure to talk about it with someone, a business partner, a key person in the organization, a peer leader group. Make sure you're getting visibility on these numbers and that you're tracking them every single week. What you'll find is that these 3 numbers actually tell you a story about your business. Revenue book tells you about this week's momentum. Pipeline coverage tells you about next month's trajectory. And Tree tells you if your existing team can support the growth that you're chasing. So you don't need a 47-row KPI dashboard. You just need 3 numbers that you're looking at every single week that can tell you most of the story. If you want to know which of your 6 business systems is the primary constraint right now, take our free executive flow assessment. It takes about 4 minutes, it's 18 questions, and the link is in the description.